What if I was to tell you that there have been major scientific discoveries in the field of traumatic brain injuries that are just not being implemented right now? And there are multiple clinical studies to validate that we've been looking at brain injuries in an entirely incorrect manner or missing a big piece of the puzzle. But it is now clinically proven time after time that when somebody has a brain injury, there becomes an autoimmune condition that starts to occur. You see, our body has its own immune system and our brain has its own immune system. And when you get shocked or a jolt to the head or a hit, you break what's called the blood brain barrier. Just like we have a gut and we could have a leaky gut, we could have a leaky brain. My name is Scott. My company is My Brain Mechanic, meaning I'm your personal brain mechanic. And it is my passion to look at what is called now functional neurology and bring the latest science to people to really understand that there is hope for a lot of these conditions. Even with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, once mild cognitive impairment starts, it can be stopped and reversed until you cross the line. So even the World Economic Forum is now saying that mental health is outnumbering cancer as the number one concern. My background has been in what's called functional medicine for 30 years. 17 of those years, I was the lead educator for the company that created the Institute of Functional Medicine outside the US. And I trained physicians and practitioners in 23 countries until 2014 when I had a traumatic brain injury. And there may be a handful of people in the world back then and even now that really understood what was happening with brain injuries and how to treat them. And as I said earlier, when that blood brain barrier, that wall is broken, our body's immune system gets into the brain and looks around and sees things that it doesn't notice or recognize. And then it starts to attack, and there's heavy metals up in our brain, and there's inflammation going on. So then the body's immune system begins an attack, and you get what's called an autoimmune condition. Then, on top of it, our brain has its own immune system, which is primarily made up of glial cells that are there to protect the neurons or clean up damaged or dead neurons. Well, what do you think it's going to start doing when it has another immune system attacking and killing off neurons and causing a lot of brain damage and inflammation? So then you upregulate and overreact the brain's immune system. So one of the first things that we can do now in functional medicine or functional neurology is seal the blood-brain barrier. And we can keep those two immune systems from colliding with each other. Then, what's really critically important, and this is every mental condition, mental health disease, condition, symptom, is associated with inflammation, neuroinflammation, brain on fire. And there is no drug that can reduce neuroinflammation, but there are a variety of compounds that are natural compounds that have been clinically studied and have clinical trials that show that they have the ability to reduce and downregulate neuroinflammation significantly. So when we can downregulate neuroinflammation and seal that blood-brain barrier, we now have a start. We have a foundation to work with to start rebuilding the brain. And then we can start to put in the nutrients that are needed to get those neurons to start branching out again, to start creating neuroplasticity. And then one of the other important components of working with the brain that's been damaged or injured is making sure that we have good cerebral blood flow. Just the blood flow in and of itself will do a lot of healing, but we want to get the nutrients to all the right parts of the brain. One of the challenges is that most things that cause blood flow to increase are inflammatory. They are what is called induced nitric oxide or inducible nitric oxide. We want to use endothelial or neuronal nitric oxide compounds that create cerebral blood flow without the inflammation. And then the final and really critical component that we're really starting to learn over the last few years is the gut brain axis. And that if you don't have a healthy microbiome, you're not going to have a healthy brain. And if you don't have a healthy brain, you're not going to have a healthy microbiome. The brain and the gut are in constant communication all day long. The gut is really where a lot of our feel good chemicals are starting to get produced. Neuroepinephrine, GABA, serotonin, um, these types of feel good chemicals all start with a healthy microbiome. And then the signaling process that happens from a healthy microbiome really reacts with the brain and showing it how to have neuronal firing and connection to work properly in the right way. When you have a destroyed and messed up gut, you don't have those things happen. So you're really doing a lot more damage to the brain. So as you can see, now that we have the gut brain axis and we have an understanding of that, we have an understanding that traumatic brain injuries become autoimmune conditions and that there's a lot of neuroinflammation, but all three of those areas are treatable. And in an article, the National Institute of Health, it is now saying that supplementation is the only thing that is showing the most promise and success. But only really a handful of people, I think, in the world really understand how to use functional neurology, specifically with brain injuries and cognitive impairment. That's why I've created my brain mechanic. I've primarily been an educator and in the corporate world for functional medicine companies, training practitioners and physicians, but have now opened my own practice. And there's a link below where you can schedule a free consultation with me. And I do that, and I'm one of the only people that does it because I suffered a brain injury myself in 2014, and it changed everything. And I went through absolute hell, and I looked for help everywhere, and it took some miracles to happen. So to have somebody that you can talk to that's been there, I think is a really great thing. Hopefully, I think it's a great thing. And I have a very interesting story, and I want to hear your story as well. And I want to continue to bring out more content on a weekly or monthly basis on YouTube so that I can start explaining and giving you the science that's out there so that you can take control of your health and that you can realize that if you're starting to go down a bad path, it can be changed. And if you have a traumatic brain injury and you've been living with a lot of symptoms, those can go away. We can have incredible healing that we never thought possible. So I look forward to more content coming out, and I look forward to hopefully speaking with you.